Architecturally speaking, pillars are an important part to a building, but you also need pillars in building a successful football club. Some of the pillars for Milan have been identified in a report by Calciomercato and also now confirmed by Milan sporting director Iglitare. Number 1 on that list, Rafael Leao, a player with the potential of being a superstar, but the output shows not quite yet. The second pillar on that list, Christian Pulisic, a player discarded by Chelsea but goes on to become the highest goal contributor, one of the highest goal contributors for Milan 2 seasons in a row. Another one potentially, as confirmed by Milan sporting director Mike Maignan, a player that was close to leaving for Chelsea, but now Iglitare says will stay with the club next season. But beyond that, there's lack of clarity. Santi Jimenez, Yusuf Fofana, or is it going to be one of the new profiles that joins this club that would shape up to be the next pillar? Or is it going to be one of these profiles that we're going to be looking at in today's episode of Rumor or Real? Now, Jashari was one of the players that I covered in the past video, but over maybe a few days, it seemed like there was pretty much radio silence on the player. There was some reports that were suggesting that Milan actually, communicated with Club Brugge. They found out what their price tag for the player was, and they sort of just walked away from him, and they went more into the Javi Guerra kind of direction. Although, it has to be said that if you compare the two players, Javi Guerra and Ardon Jashari, there is a bit of a difference in the two profiles. Jashari seems to be a player that plays a little bit further back. He is maybe more in line with, you could say, Ismail Benacer than he is necessarily, an out-and-out Tijani Reinders replacement, but he still seems to be a player that can offer you attacking output, that's for sure. Last season in the Belgian league, he was the MVP, the player of the season, and even from his, expected goals and expected assists, Milan needs a player that contributes to the team defensively, but also attack-wise. This guy has, his numbers have been improving when it comes to his non-penalty expected goals and his expected assist for goals. His numbers have naturally gone up as his career has progressed. And if you look at the kind of way that, Max Allegri likes to play, I think there was a bit of miscommunication there in regards to Allegri's style of play. I would never want to say that Allegri is a defensive coach. I would want to say that he's a defense-first coach. And for a player like that, a profile like Jashari that can also offer you something from the defensive standpoint compared to what it seemed like Javi Guerra could offer you, that seems to me a little bit of the difference as to why at this point in time Milan is going for Jashari, and the Guerra links now have quietened down a little bit. As I talked in the past videos, there's also that link that the player has to the club. We've talked about Yusuf Fofana last season, the will of the player to join the club. Again with Jashari as well, there's some storylines that we've heard about how he was at the San Siro watching a Milan match, Milan playing against Barcelona back in 2012. There's pictures of him as an 8-year-old at the stadium. So obviously there's that emotional connection to the club. He's only been at Club Brugge for 1 season, so naturally Milan is also taking a bit of a chance on a player that they've watched for a season, because we kind of know what happened with Charles de Ketelaere. You feel like he came into a system that was maybe a bit too much. I think the utilization of the player, even by Stefano Pioli, maybe wasn't the best, or the system just didn't really allow the kind of players that Milan had. They couldn't play the way that, CDK would like to play. And the moment that he went to Atalanta, he became a different player. That's what Milan has to be careful about with Jashari. You get 1 good season in the Belgian Pro League. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate to success with the Rossoneri. And it's the same thing sort of if we talk about the price as well. When the CDK rumors were happening, my goodness, 3 years ago, when the Charles de Ketelaere negotiations were taking place between Milan, represented at that point in time by Paolo Maldini, and Club Brugge, man, they did not negotiate. They were steadfast in their price. And there have been some reports that have come out, like the one by Luca Bianchi, that mentioned that Brugge is looking for a price tag of 45 million to 50 million. That's where they value the player at, but maybe somewhere around that 40 million euro mark they will settle. Earlier today, there was confirmation from Matteo Moretto that Milan had made an offer for the player of 25 million plus 5 million in bonuses. It's even Fabrizio Romano, I believe, mentioned that they want 35 million plus bonuses. Milan's offer is around 25 million plus 5 million in bonuses. So they're not too far, to be quite honest. But as I mentioned, because of the rigidness that Club Brugge's negotiators are, the way that they are so rigid on the price, if their evaluation is 40 million is what they want, 35 plus 5 million in bonuses, Milan's going to have to go a lot closer. So already maybe about 7-8 hours after Matteo Moretto's report came out that 25 million plus 5 million in bonus offer was made, there has now been an update on that. The latest update from him is 27 million euros plus 5 million in bonuses. That cranks it up to 32 million euros. Now, does this deal actually go through? It's very tough to say because there's an important element that we're forgetting here. The transfer window has not opened up yet. It opens up on July 1st. There's a very good chance Milan is pushing to get this done beforehand because once the window opens up, there's also going to be the inclusion of other clubs. And we saw that happened so many times to Milan the last few years where there would be a profile that the club would go for example, Joshua Zirkzee. Suddenly, before you know it, a bigger, financially stronger club, maybe from a stronger league, steps in and sort of hijacks that league. They use your scouting department's strength of identifying a player, but then they use the strength of their wallet to sort of snatch them away from you. And there have been reports that Manchester United themselves are monitoring the situation and are considering Jashari themselves too. So when it comes to stamping this profile, I mean, I'm going to have to stamp this naturally because Sasha Tavolieri has talked about it, because Matteo Moretto has talked about it. Naturally, this is very much real. Does it actually happen? Yeah, I think this could happen. Which brings us to the next profile of Javi Guerra. This one's going to be a quick one. The main news about Javi Guerra here is that he has reportedly denied a contract extension with Valencia. It was being said that Milan had made an offer of 16 million plus 4 million in bonuses. Spanish newspapers were saying that Valencia found that offer offensive. Maybe for that reason, that negotiation has been fairly quiet for a few days now. Daniele Longo said that Valencia was looking for about 25 in the range of 25 million euros for the player, maybe even more. So with an initial bid of 16 million plus 4 million in bonuses, Milan definitely went under that price tag. But the fact that the player has now told Valencia that, hey, I'm not going to be signing a contract renewal, that could help any club trying to pry the player away from Valencia. There was an interesting tidbit by Pietro Mazzara who mentioned that Valencia is actually looking for, I believe, a new CEO. So it's possible that while they're restructuring their upper brass, they're just holding off on negotiations because they want to wait for, new leadership to sort of set the direction of what they're going to do with some of these players. So maybe that's why the negotiation might be on hold. But there have been reports that have said that somewhere around 28 million euros is where Valencia values the player, but there's potential of getting a deal done around 24 million euros. So Javi Guerra to Milan, as I already said, I feel like he's a different profile from Ardon Jashari. I think he's way more progressive. He plays way more further up than Jashari does. So I wouldn't say that, one would cancel out the other. I think it is possible that both players could join, although we would have to wait to see what happens with the whole Granit Xhaka situation. So for now, Javi Guerra to Milan, I'm going to stamp this as possible, not quite real just yet. Now, Xhaka, from a player standpoint, very easy to understand, has experience, is solid defensively, clearly a leader, something that, Massimiliano Allegri has gone to the management and demanded. He's asked for leaders. Milan is not bringing on Luka Modric for just footballing reasons. Milan is bringing him on because he brings a wealth of experience in winning pretty much everything that football has to offer. And to have a young midfield sort of growing around the guidance of Modric would help no matter what anybody thinks. And that addition of Granit Xhaka would also help the club a lot. But when the player is 32 years old, the price tag's going to have to be right. Now, it had been said that Milan was trying to get a deal around 10 million for Xhaka, potentially even less than that because he is 32 years. He's going to be 33 soon. Whereas Leverkusen are asking for somewhere between 15 million to 18 million. Now, 18 million for a 32-year-old, even I would tell Milan not to pay. Maybe in the low teens, maybe around 10, 11, 12 million euros. That's what seems to be about right for a player of his age. While recording, there has been some news that has come out that, according to Gianluca Di Marzio, that his price tag has actually dropped. I don't know what happened in the last few hours that made it drop, but Bayer Leverkusen is saying that, hey, you know what? We're actually going to be willing to take around 8 to 10 million euros for this player. If that happens, I think Xhaka will come to Milan, but I'm not quite sure what makes the player's value drop so suddenly. Definitely want to make sure you keep an eye on his medical records to see if his body's fit or not. But that's the latest that we're hearing. So maybe this deal could actually go through. And then there's the departure of Theo Hernandez. I'm probably going to have to do a full video on Theo, maybe a bigger chunk of putting towards him when this deal actually gets firmed up and he actually moves to Al Hilal. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. It seems like it's done though. He is going to be moving there. Once the Theo Hernandez transfer goes through and he moves to Al Hilal, those funds are going to come in and Milan's probably going to be redirecting them towards Max de Cuyper or maybe even Zinchenko. The whole breakdown of relationship I can't really cover in today's video. I have to talk about so many different profiles, but I think it has to be discussed at length. And I think everybody holds a significant amount of the blame. AC Milan as an organization holds blame, and Theo Hernandez also as an individual player holds blame for how his time at Milan, eventually ended. And in fairness, Milan sporting director Hilal did confirm that Theo Hernandez just wanted to change his scenery. So it wasn't just that the club drove him out or it was his performances or anybody's necessarily at fault. It's also that the player just wanted to go somewhere new, try something different. But what I will say, and this is, and I've debated a few people on Twitter about this, I put this tweet out and I truly still stand by that. Theo Hernandez is the greatest left back that Milan has had since Paolo Maldini. And he, to me, is maybe not a legend of Milan, but he definitely is one of the iconic players this club has had. And I think as time progresses, he probably would have that legendary status, as he maybe should. He's the defender that has scored the most goals for Milan in its 125-year history. Then there's a transfer of Dusan Vlahovic from Juventus to Milan, arguably, very likely the #1 strike department target that Milan has. I think there has to be some clarity as to what's going to happen with Santi Giménez. I really hope that Allegri is going to be giving him a fair shake. He's going to get his chances. And Milan sporting director Iglitare did come out and say that they want to sign a striker. They want to sign an out-and-out center forward who's going to be able to replace what Olivier Giroud used to do, which was straight up scoring goals. And they want to bring somebody to compete with Santi Giménez. These are the words of the sporting director of Milan. They want to bring somebody who competes with Santi Giménez. So that is an important update for Milan's management. The issue with Dusan is now it has also actually been said that Juventus has put a price tag of 25 million euros on the player, which is fairly reasonable for a player that has played in Serie A for so many seasons. He can finish. I mean, he scored a bunch of goals, so he can finish. He just hasn't been very good at it for the past couple seasons. He has to be in the right system too, but as a player, I think last couple seasons, he actually was a poor finisher a lot of the times too, especially during that Thiago Motta phase of Juventus. Now, the roadblock with him, I mean, we've beaten this topic like a dead horse, but it still is a roadblock, his salary. It has been said that Iglitare has, we're not 100% sure if this is confirmed, but there have been reports that have suggested, this time by La Repubblica, that says that Iglitare has actually informed Vlahovic that, hey, your salary is going to be no more. We cannot pay you any more than 6 million euros net. What he's supposed to make at Juventus next season is 12 million euros. That's double. He'd have to give a 50% discount to Milan on his salary. Why would he do that? The only thing that Milan can sort of offer to him is a longer length of a contract, so he has guaranteed income coming in at a decent level when he gets older. But when it comes to matching that 12 million euro mark, there is no possibility of that happening. So Vlahovic to Milan, I mean, I really don't even know what to stamp this. The choice is naturally between possible and unlikely. You guys let me know what you think about this deal potentially happening because of the salary roadblock. Because of that, I'm actually going to say unlikely. If there's any news, any inkling that comes out that Vlahovic is willing to lower his salary, I'll immediately stamp this as real. But until I get any news report mentioning that, I'm going to say it's going to be unlikely. Which brings us to Maxim de Cuyper. This is the player that Milan has been linked with to replace Theo Hernandez for pretty much 6 months now. We started hearing about his name maybe last summer transfer window, but certainly in the winter transfer window. And you got to say, we love Theo Hernandez, but you could say that maybe he was amazing in attack, but he also had some limitations. He had that brute strength and that pace. He would just bomb forward because he would just use his pace and his physical strength to just be able to move up. There's no question he could cross the ball too, but those were his main attributes and he made the best use of them. And, using that lethal left foot that would dish out rockets that we saw throughout his time at Milan. But on the flip side, Maxim de Cuyper to me seems like a little bit more of a more well-rounded left back. Now, again, he's also playing in the Belgian league, just like Jashari, just like Charles de Ketelaere from the past. So these are players that are not playing at the top level. But what you see from him is he's a little bit more dynamic in attack. He can run fast, not as fast as Theo Hernandez. He can dribble, I would say, marginally better from whatever highlights that I've seen of him. I would say more than Theo, this guy tends to dish out a lot of through balls to his teammates, but most importantly, he seems to be better than Theo from a defensive standpoint. Again, the attack level is different in the Belgian league, so we're going to have to wait to see how that translates in Serie A, but he does seem to have more qualities from a defensive standpoint. And also keep in mind, he's a younger player. He has more to prove. He'll probably show more hunger. Theo's biggest problem last season wasn't his skill set. It wasn't his ability to defend. It was just his mindset. It seemed like his hunger was gone. He just didn't care enough to make things happen for his team. But a young player like the Cuyper would have that need to prove himself, and that could translate into something a lot better. As long as the skill set match with his intention of being a good player, it's going to be really helpful for the club. It is being said that the Theo Hernandez deal would help fund the Max the Cuyper deal, so there's possibility that the Rossoneri are first going to wait till the Al Hilal deal is firm and then reinvest those funds. They probably don't want to make that commitment beforehand because Theo has not been able to make his mind of his move to Al Hilal. So maybe it's possible that Milan feels there's a risk that that might not happen. So they want it to be a firm deal before they make a move on the Cuyper to replace him. But for now, when it comes to this profile, I'm going to say this is possible. Milan's going to have to find a new left back to replace Theo, and this guy seems to be on the top of their list for quite some time. Which brings us to the potential arrival of Samuele Ricci. Now, Ricci is another player that Milan, has been making the rounds in the Milan circles since probably January. When the summer kicked off and the Rangers move was, sort of unfolding, there were reports that as soon as Rangers is gone, Samuele Ricci is going to come. But as soon as Rangers is gone, the links with Ricci actually kind of did die off, which is a little bit strange because, this is an Italian player. He fills in an important quota. The team is trying to Italianize itself more as well. But more importantly, this is actually a decent player who could help out the team. Now, he's definitely not a direct replacement for Rangers by any stretch. He's a significantly more defensive player, but he has the ability to finish as well. He has the ability to create from the back. He is a quality player when it comes from a defensive standpoint. Now, what you can say is that maybe the Granit Xhaka link sort of deviated the plan away from Ricci, and Milan just decided to focus on Xhaka instead. And now that the Xhaka deal seems to be a little bit more complicated, they're coming back to the Ricci deal, because that's what Matteo Moretto came out and said today, that it would take, according to him, his words, it'll take Milan 10 minutes to get this deal done because they already have an agreement with the player and they already have an agreement with Torino, or at least a verbal confirmation with Torino as to what they can get the deal done at. So at this point in time, Samuele Ricci to Milan, I would say I'm going to have to again stamp this one as possible as well. There have been some conflicting reports about the Xhaka deal now that the price has gone down. I'm not quite sure how, but if Xhaka comes, then maybe Ricci won't come, but I think it's possible. Maybe it's going to be one player and not the other. Which brings us to the profile of Federico Chiesa. Now, weeks ago, there was one journalist that said that Milan had agreed personal terms with Chiesa. I talked about that in the video. Since then, things kind of got a little quiet. Then news came out that, actually, Milan is monitoring Chiesa. Nobody actually officially said that they have an agreement with the player, but they said that there is some negotiation that is happening with Liverpool. There was an understanding maybe that the negotiation with Liverpool probably didn't, go quite the right way, or at least the communication. But the latest report on Federico as well is that Milan is open to bringing that player, but the only way that happens if they actually let go of one of the wingers. And that has actually been made official now by the sporting director of Milan in Iglitare, that a winger will be signed on as long as a winger leaves. And that is what we're hearing from reports earlier, that the most likely player to leave would be Samuel Chukwueze, because he's not part of Max Allegri's plans. And if he leaves, there's a chance that Chiesa comes back and plays with Max. They already spent time together in Juventus. This is a player that Max understands. Chukwueze is a player that I quite honestly don't even think fits Max's system. So Chukwueze out, Chiesa in, I think that's very much possible. So that's how I'm going to stamp this. I think this is possible. This could happen. Well, there you have it, Milanisti. Those are some of the profiles you want to take a look at today. I think it has been important for Milan fans to hear from Iglitare directly, hear even from Giorgio Furlani as to, what exactly is going on. They didn't quite mention the Rangers sale. That was not talked about. but the focus was more so on the future of the club. They have made it clear they're looking for a left back, a right back, and a center back if one leaves. A potential winger will also be signed on if another winger leaves, and then they're almost certainly going to sign a center forward as well. Which of the players talked about in today's video do you think are going to be joining the club? Make sure to let me know in the comment section. And as always from my side, Forza Milan, grazie mille, ciao tutti. This is style of play and the scandals. Oh, the scandals, including a bizarre locker room incident where a player essentially drugged his own teammates. And we'll look at how lowering Serie A from 20 teams to 18 teams might be the